Okay, so what did we think, and which group wants to tell us what they saw? Which group wants to go first?
Group one, we can go first. I think his message about, and this was the little video snippet on native plants can help reduce erosion. I think the message is a good message. He needs to work on his delivery a bit because, as Anne stated, he sounds very abrasive. Um, Also, Anne made a good point that, when you see the video, you see his face, his head, and the vegetation in the background is obscured because of his head and face. And it would have been nice to show some of the native plants that he is recommending that you use to replace lawns that will help with erosion. Message is a good message, its delivery and providing more context around that message. He it needed more context for people who aren't in the industry and who aren't gardeners or landscapers to understand why this is important.
So the beginning of a good message, poor delivery,
Exactly.
and a big head.
And a big
Like right in the center. It was, that was all you saw, really.
Thanks. Group two?
Um, so we had a like minute and a half video that was an animation on stormwater runoff. And it highlighted the issues of, when rain comes down, it's going over all these impervious soil or impervious surfaces, picking up all sorts of debris and bringing it into our waterways. They contrasted that against sort of like internal use, like water in your homes that's then, drained out and treated and recirculated. We thought it was, a quick, informative video that had, strong, like good visuals to show the whole ecosystem and why it's a problem, so it could, uh, reach a broad audience. But very sort of surface level and um, yeah, so maybe not the most in depth. We described it as sort of being like a hook to kind of, catch someone's attention, quickly address an issue, but not, get bogged down by details.
Thanks. Anybody else in group two?
That would be me. One comment was that the environment that was illustrated was suburbia, and I often work with kids that don't have front lawns, and I just thought maybe interjecting some other environmental features where it could be more relatable to a broader audience. I know it's a short video, but it was going so fast. I could just see them kind of going around the corner in this development, and there's a different building and they still have runoff, but and it was in English, and I didn't know who the intended audience is and if it's available in other languages.
Good question. The only thing I found were those in English, but I didn't look for multilingual videos. Thank you. Group three?
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead if you want to, Kara.
Oh, I was just gonna say, our video was on stormwater how to, I guess was the title. Um, I think overall it provided like a general kind of overview of like stormwater runoff and like just some just high level explaining like what it is and you know what it does. It didn't really get into any details on like how homeowners could like mitigate it or businesses, but it did show like a lot of different I guess areas and like ecosystems. It looked like the video was based in like California, so like California coast. Um, but yeah, it's just very, very high level, general, like stormwater runoff, what it is, what it does. that sort of thing.
Anybody else from that group?
Sure. I actually really liked how they framed it, like showing us water runoff in the different environments that Kara was mentioning, but then also framed it within the larger watershed and that sort of like trickle down effect of even if you're not coastal, how what's happening on the waterways, on the roadways in your city will flow eventually into the waterways and kind of creating the awareness since most people who live, in a city think of all water is treated, like just starting to raise some of the awareness of how not all water is treated and what we do here affects, part of the watershed so far away and that broader scope.
And it does. Thank you. Group 4?
So we had also a video about stormwater management, and I think it was decent in the solutions that it provided. I hadn't really thought too much about the size of trees and how far the roots go down and how slowly or quickly they absorb the water and distribute it, and filter it through their systems to get rid of contaminants. And it brought the awareness of, when you put stuff down those storm drains, it doesn't always just go to the public sewer, like Elise was saying, to get treated. So I thought it made the point pretty clear.
Anybody else from Group 4?
Yeah, I agree with Kelly, what Kelly said. I think they did a very good job of laying out, the flow of, from a street side, that it ends up in a river or a pond or a lake or whatever. And I also like the fact that they came up with this 3S, soak, slow, and spread, as a way to understand how to potentially think about ways to, address it. And, very simple, very straightforward. So I think it was well done.
Good. Did anybody find anything that was new to them or different or contradicted something that you believed? Sounds like one of my
No,
cats did.
I didn't.
No? Okay, let's talk about your case studies, the summaries that you submitted. Who's ready to go first and tell us what you found? I know some of you started and didn't like the way that case study was going, so you picked a different one. Hi, Callie. Um, so and that's fine. You'll find that you do that a great deal in this field. So who wants to go first and tell us? And Elizabeth's shaking her head. Yeah. You do. You change your mind, right?
Well,
You
I
start on
did
one
early
road.
on though. I got quickly redirected. So, but I'm happy to. I just put together a couple slides to kind of help summarize and people
Sure,
understand what I'm doing.
go for it.
If I can manage to. I haven't done slides since I retired 2 years ago, and of course now I've got the orchestra with me. Let's see. Here we go. Um, let me just share my. Where are we screen sharing here? Sorry guys, I hate to be that person, but oh share. Okay, right in the middle, right in front of me. Okay, if you can tell me if you can see this.
We can
And
see it.
again, apologies for it's I can stop and back. Okay, so the project that I looked at is called Tishmarsh Wildlife Sanctuary, and the reason it caught my eye is a couple things that I highlighted here in blue. Um, it was a 600-acre family-owned commercial cranberry bog, and it had been in operation for over 100 years. Um, and at its height, it produced about 101% of the crop for ocean spray. As you folks may know, the whole cranberry industry has migrated more over to the Midwest. So we're seeing more and more of these retired farms and I'll get to kind of what drove this one, but the timeline was 2010 to 2016, and there are still projects underway right now. The land, again, I apologize for the background. Wouldn't it figure? Um, the land is in Plymouth, Massachusetts. It's and it actually a sub part of it called Manomet, and it became a high priority for the Division of Ecological Restoration. This individual, Alex Hackman, had actually just finished restoring one of the first cranberry bogs, this 440-acre Eel River restoration, and on the heels of that. Um, he was brought in and got involved in this particular one with the 600 acres. Um, just a moment here. Oh, God. So the goals of the project, quite quickly, the farm owners was Gloriana Davenport was probably the key person, and Evan Schulman, her husband. She actually had heard about that, and she wanted to make sure the property was protected, that it was never developed, and she also wanted it to be opened. She also wanted it to serve as a laboratory for people to come in and monitor the long-term effects of restoration. And since it was so close to the coastline, it was a really important opportunity to understand how, the wildlife effects and so on. So the goal of it was to undo the decades of effects on this poor land and help it heal over time. The key aspect that they wanted to take under consideration was that there are decades of using this that had left pesticides, fertilizers, and so on embedded in the land, and they wanted to protect the watershed area from those as they went forward. Um, so the challenge, as I said, it had been used since the 1890s, um, and they basically clear cut it, drained it, did all that stuff. Um, and as part of any bog, they basically, use sand. I think they put like a half an inch, 2 inches every 2 to 5 years. So, um, it was basically what they call a layer cake of sand and organic materials, this cake layering, as they call it. So, while the most obvious way to remove the sand would be to excavate it, it's extremely costly. So that was one of the biggest challenges they encountered. I won't go through all this, but there are different ways to remove the sand. It's basically saturating the sand and letting the water come in and help, heal the land. For this particular project, they actually collected about 3,000 pieces of wood before they even started moving anything around. And they seeded 7,000 Atlantic white cedar, which are native to the area. They ended up removing 7 dams, dikes, berms, and so on that were holding back the water. And they were able to move what accumulated to 2 feet of sand, covering the actual natural peat that was there. And they also, redirected a lot of the meandering streams from the underlying brook. So it was pretty significant effort. Um, the Just quickly on this one, the before and afters, just to quickly help you understand, this is before the restoration. This is after the restoration. This is a view of one of the waterways before and after. You can see that, the logs and such that they put in there and helped create a much more natural flow of water. And this one's pretty stark as well. Here's one of the major dams that they removed, and this is it afterwards. So you can see the wildlife basically returning to a much more natural state. Um, Sorry, let me finish here. So, what it's brought today is it has now been acquired by the Mass Audubon Society, and they've created the wildlife sanctuary and opened it to the public. They've got all kinds of programs, classes. You can go online and see all that they've got to offer there. But the wetlands itself has been modified to such an extent that it's become resilient. They're able to contain floodwaters that come in, and it actually supports the water supply when there's drought. Right now, probably one of the most significant things that it allows unobstructed flow of the water from the headway Beaverbrook Pond all the way to the ocean, which is just a huge feat in itself. They've created this herring count project because the river herring have finally returned after being gone for 100 years. And in addition to that, they've seen 78 other additional fish species there. They, as a sub project there, this Floodplain Grasslands project has been looking at the native plants, and they've now seen little blue stem, blueberries. All these are native to this area, as well as, toads, grasshoppers, and so on. In addition, one of the things they hadn't expected, but I guess makes sense, is that it's now a stopover for the fall migrating species. So a huge impact. The two other things that caught my eye and catch it and selecting this one is they've established this living observatory, which is basically a collaboration of scientists, artists, and other folks involved in restoration practitioners, and they've included building out these sensors and recordings and so on. You can go online and see at any point in time what's going on in this particular wildlife sanctuary. But further to that, they've created this making spaces, which now invites other retired cranberry farms to take advantage of these strategies that they put in place, and creates this cross-sector system to help protect and restore others. There are about 14,000 additional acres that remain today in Massachusetts that, hopefully will find their way in the right direction. There are, now that Marsh is complete, there are actually 7 more restorations that are underway today that kind of are dovetailing off of the work that was done there. So I thought that was pretty impressive. Um, so, oh, hold on. So that was it. I hope that made sense. I hope
That
that
was
covered what was
incredible.
important. Thank you.
But I think you shocked us all because we all thought that cranberries still came from Massachusetts. And
Well,
it's in the
yeah,
mid, I don't,
no.
it doesn't work. You can't grow
That,
cranberries in the Midwest. That just doesn't
well,
work.
well, that's the ironic part is when I've grown up here, and it used to be to go down to Cape Cod. There were no big highways. You took these, 2-lane roads down, and I remember during harvest season, you'd be driving, and there'd be just one after the other of these red ponds, where they're floated the cranberries. And now, if you take those back roads, it's just sad little old bogs sitting there. But yeah, I mean, and I did some further research out. Is it Minnesota, Wisconsin, I think, where most of it's taking place now. They're doing the exact same thing, bringing in sand and like all the things that we're trying to remedy and rectify are now going on there. So I kind of feel a little bit sad that that's happening. On the other hand, at least, here in Massachusetts, we're able to kind of make the most of what was done in the past.
Your before and after pictures were stunning.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there are some. They're just reading through the project. It's just amazing. The level of expertise, the level of groups that were involved in it. It was a $3.6 billion project. So, oh no, sorry, $3.6 million project. Excuse me.
Yeah, I was gonna say
But
that's
still,
expensive.
a good chunk of change was put
It
into
is.
it.
Questions for Elizabeth? Comments other than the cranberries?
No, thank you for that. I learned today that you can grow cranberries in other locations. I always thought because of the conditions in Massachusetts
Yeah.
and the wetlands, et cetera, that you could only grow them there. So,
Well, so, yeah, so it's predicated on having peat moss bogs. So
okay.
all of these, the peat moss has been, that's what's under those 2 feet of sand. And they
Uh,
just layer sand and organic matter. So where they're now growing them, it's the same thing. They found another area that has peat moss native, or hopefully we don't say that in the past tense, but yeah.
okay. Thanks.
Who would like to present next?
You can go.
Okay.
I do not have a presentation. Sorry. But I wanted to follow on Elizabeth because, um, again, with Massachusetts. I've been looking specifically at a salt marsh restoration. And this all is like within the area of the cranberry bogs and whatnot. We're really looking at like a lot of around like the Buzzards Bay area and how that can be, how do we protect that from sea rise? And when you have salt marshes in New England, Massachusetts has the most salt marshes, and it's one of the most like valuable carbon storage places that there is. Like more carbon is stored there than really anywhere else. When we talk, we're just watching those videos on stormwater runoff. It's these salt marshes provide that pollution filtration and so much mainland protection when nor'easters and hurricanes come up the coast, as well as wildlife habitat. And the salt marshes, you know, they're often right by these cranberry bogs. So almost one problem feeds into the next. And the restoration, I was specifically looking at Allen's Pond, which is, I smiled when you first put yours up because, Elizabeth, because it was one of the ones that I first looked at. There were many cranberry bog projects, and I really liked Allen's Pond and a lot of similar techniques for restoration were being used. You know, they were creating runnels. So much has to do with stormwater just sitting on top of salt marshes and not letting them really flex and flow. I mean, they're living organisms. And when that water sits there, they can't really do their job properly. So how could barriers be removed? So there was a lot of small dams and channels that were removed, and then natural runnels, natural being a term used loosely, but ones being dug back in to help create natural runoff, like allow that to sort of occur in a more natural way. Additionally, with these being such living organisms, there was a huge initiative within Allen's Pond and within many other salt marshes to remove invasive species. So things like the Phragmites that were really, you know, different honeysuckles that were taking over and preventing, sort of choking out the native species. And coming in and having those plants systematically removed and then utilizing a planting system to bring the natives back. And with these efforts, not only is the water flow much improved, but just in terms of wildlife markers and those biomarkers, they're starting to see the terrapin come back, which is hugely important for keeping certain populations of crabs at bay so that the appropriate roots and root masses can form the mat structures that are needed in the salt marsh. Ospreys are coming back into the area, as well as the salt marsh sparrow, which has its population had decreased, you know, by almost 80% in the last 20 years. And then to see that starting to come back within the area were all sort of indicators of success of this project. And there were a ton of groups involved in this, but this one does circle back, as Elizabeth's did, and is now a property cared for by Mass Audubon. So a lot of good being done by that organization.
Is that open to the public too?
Absolutely.
So this is more like a, not a park, but it is a place where people can go and walk and see and learn.
Yes, the Mass Audubon Network is pretty much all the properties are open, many of which have nature centers, a lot of camps. At those centers, I know my children have used those over the years, but and while there are like, yes, they work with the EPA and Save the Bay and, you know, like Bristol County and all these different amazing organizations that work together. It's also very much run by volunteers and community activism to kind of bring projects to light.
Thank you. Anybody have questions or comments for Elise? No, thank you, ma'am. That's cool. I learned some more stuff. I didn't realize there was a salt marsh sparrow. we have something here, the Carolina wren, that is about that big. And they are the loudest birds you will ever hear. It's just like the littlest dog has the biggest bark. These can be in a tree across the street and it sounds like they're in your living room. So it's nice to hear the birds are coming back. Who would like to go next?
I'll go.
Okay.
Okay, so I was one of those that started one project and then realized I don't think this thing is finished, so I moved on to something else. Um, Mine was the invasive species removal and ridge reforestation at the, I don't know how it's pronounced, Hammer Woodlands at Cove Mountain Preserve in Pennsylvania, near the Chesapeake watershed. The purpose of this project, it was to create a nature preserve. Well, it was adding to a existing preserve. I guess there was a strip of land in between that was not part of it to begin with. So the Nature Conservancy, sorry, purchased it, and they wanted to remove invasive species and repopulate it with native trees, and also prevent the land from falling into developers' hands because the area has seen a lot of overdevelopment in recent years. So I chose this case because it was local to Pennsylvania, and the other project I chose was a wetlands restoration project for deteriorating infrastructure, but it seemed like it wouldn't be finished until the end of this year. The project I chose started in 2017, and I don't have the exact end date. The latest date I could find was that they added land to it in 2021. But it also said that it's an ongoing maintenance because of the invasives. They just have to keep, I guess, monitoring them to make sure they don't overtake the area again. One of the big challenges to the project was that the invasive species tree of heaven, Ailanthus altissima, was cleared. And then when they got underneath that layer, they found a lot of invasive ground cover, Japanese stilt grass, and something else called a mile a minute, Persicaria perfoliate, which basically can grow 12 inches in 24 hours. So to get rid of all of that, it was too much of a task to pull them all out. So they used herbicides to basically kill them all. And in their place, they planted a lot of oaks, dogwood, eastern red cedar, and northern bayberry. And in doing so, one of their main goals was to assist the birds that are migrating because the patterns have shifted and they go through that area to get to the more northern areas for breeding. So by doing this, they basically were like bolstering the population of a bird that was dwindling since the 70s called the cerulean warbler. And so in 2022, the North American Bird Conservation Initiative published their annual report saying that that bird population had finally stabilized, and could be in part to these efforts. Because this bird apparently prefers tall, mature trees for its nesting and for its foraging. So, yeah.
So what did you learn that you didn't know?
When I didn't know. Not sure.
Well, they added on, right? There was part
Yeah,
of this land added
right.
on.
The initial purchase was in 2017, and then in 2021 they added another tract of land, and I guess it ended up connecting to. It sounds like it was a reserve that was a wildlife reserve that was already there.
So they connected too?
I think that's how I read it. That's how I perceived it, was that there was an existing one there and this land was in between, and it basically just increased the size.
Well, that's kind of neat, right? That they took something that was there and then something they wanted and they actually connected them as opposed to not trying to protect it and connect it.
Yeah, I think they said it was a 14-mile stretch. But yeah, I knew like over the years that migration patterns had shifted because when I was younger, like Canadian geese didn't stay here, and now they're everywhere. So I knew that was an issue, but I guess I didn't realize like how much certain populations of birds were declining. I mean, 60% in 50 years seems pretty significant.
That's a lot, I think. Questions or comments for Kelly?
I have a question. What part of Pennsylvania is this in?
So when I looked at a map, it's kind of, I don't know, it's hard for me to explain. I've only lived here since 2017, so it's
I'm
hard for me to
sorry.
explain. But if you like go down towards like that Chesapeake watershed area, I think
Uh-huh.
like I think it's the Susquehanna River.
Yeah.
It's kind of like more, I want to say like in the middle, in the south. Like I'm closer to Philly. So
Yeah. Okay. So this is farther west in PA then?
I think like along that like
Yeah.
Appalachian
Okay.
line. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Okay.
from New Jersey originally, so I'm not
That's okay.
100%
Sorry.
familiar.
No, I just have something similar. So, yeah,
Amanda, you want to go next?
sure. All right. So, mine was actually something I chose also from some things I found at the Nature Conservancy. So this one is called the Eels Preserve at Moosic Mountain. And it's a very small project. In fact, they had to get donations for the project because there was no funding, no state funding or anything to cover this. And what it ended up as is initially is within the preserve, there was a pond and a dam that had been there since 1890. The dam was built as a water source for a coal company. So in northeastern Pennsylvania, I mean, that's just the coal company in a coal area, and most of the land is stripped and horrible. Anyway, so in this preserve, there was a fence about 6 acres, and in 2020, it didn't pass inspection. So the Nature Conservancy had to make a decision on what they were going to do. And they decided to breach the dam and make it a restoration project. Um, so there was a nice video that went with this, although the project hasn't gotten very far. But I actually learned a lot from the video and then doing a little more research as to why that decision was made to breach the dam, even though it was not a very large area. Um, I believe from like the whole Appalachian area and going into the Chesapeake watershed, there are many, many dams. And the two things that I learned were first that they're cutting off the aquatic life, that they can't obviously move up and down the waterways, the streams, and that these waters that are in much higher elevation, such as this one, it was Clipsterry Creek, has much colder water, and as the water accumulates in the reservoir, it warms up. So any water then running off of there is creating like warmer flows into the Chesapeake watershed. The the Conservancy is pretty much letting this area, I believe they tried to pull out as much as they could of like the mud and whatever you would call that. And they're trying to let the flow of the creek go more natural, let things set up. And they actually took a very grassroots to the project and the restoration. They did plant trees. However, they made this comment that they were collecting acorns and pine cones from the surrounding area to try to create this natural habitat. And also a lot of it is huckleberry, blueberry. So obviously they can start to grow pretty readily. Looking into like how these things, these dams affect the aquatic life. I looked into that a little bit more, and I found some articles having to do with Appalachia and you know, again, like I said, the Chesapeake watershed. When I tried to find more information on outcomes, first of all, there were no measurables mentioned for this at all. Again, it's a small project. Obviously, outcomes, it's only been a few years, so there wasn't much there. The only thing that I could find, a YouTube video came up, but a hiker took this video of the area. It still looked pretty desolate. And he mentioned, and you could see there were quite a few of those that are like light blue plastic tubing. I guess their seedlings were planted and those are protecting the seedlings. But what surprised me was his comment. He said he wished that they would have left the dam alone or just tried to fix it because it was pristine waters. You know, there was other animals using it. And then that made me think, like, you know, that is a hard thing to measure. Like, okay, so that dam was there well over 100 years. Okay, so what kind of habitat and animals came in and were using that, and what happened to them when that water, you know, when they let the dam open versus, you know, how it's going to improve then the Chesapeake watershed. So I was kind of like, you know, we got two different things going on here. That was interesting to me.
So you were a little torn that this
Yeah,
100-year-old thing that had been going on now all of a sudden is considered not native and torn down.
yeah. And so what, you know, I mean, were there birds that were using that water? Were there other animals? Were there amphibians in there? And it didn't say anything about trying to do anything about, you know, with them. I I don't know. Yeah, not a lot of information. So I didn't try to find another project though.
It'd be interesting to see if somebody picks up and runs with that, with the idea that this dam was there for 100 years. So the wildlife was something before that beginning of the 100
Yes,
years. Then for 100 years it morphed. And now how is it going to morph again? Is it going to, and we don't have any records from what you said about what
right.
it was like 100 years ago.
Yes, correct.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks. Questions or comments for Amanda? Who would like to go next?
I'll go.
Thank you, ma'am.
Um, I don't know if I cheated or if I just decided to, because I live in DC, and I live very close to the Anacostia, and both the Anacostia and the Potomac are obviously things that we see every day. I chose to sort of look at it. I called it the in perpetua case study. So it's like ongoing forever. I don't know. I have anyway. Sorry. It The Anacostia watershed takes up 176 square miles, so it's big. And for most of the 20th century, the Anacostia was known as basically the most polluted river in the country. I think DC was, you know, every time I sort of heard about Washington, DC when I was younger, it was like, oh, it's such a dirty, polluted city. Um, Sorry, my child was being very loud. Um, anyway, so 176 square miles, but within that, you have tiny little DC, right? DC is 68 square miles, 61 square miles of land, and only 7 square miles of water. Um, and we, you know, like most cities, we have finite land. And it's been so developed, and the majority of it is impermeable pavement and things like that, that our stormwater system, sewer system, and stormwater system is so antiquated that even if it rains 3 inches, the sewers overflow into the rivers. In 1989, the Anacostia Watershed Society was created, and they have been working since then to get back the Anacostia to being a swimmable and fishable river. They're not there yet. This year, for the second time since they've been really tracking it, the Anacostia got a passing grade of D. Um, I was like, since 2014, it's only the second time that the river's gotten a passing grade. Because I live in DC, and then my first project I did sustainable DC, which is a whole big legislation, and it's this huge greening DC process that our current city council and mayor started in 2013 with an update in 2021. Dealing specifically with new builds and stormwater management, and trying to become one of the most sustainable cities in the country by 2030. DC is one of those weird places. Well, it's unique, right? Because most of the land is federal, but it's run by the city or by the National Park Service. So there's all these, who has jurisdiction over what section. If you've seen what's going on with the Potomac River and the big the big spill that we just had, Governor Moore and DJT have been going back and forth about whose fault it is. I chose this because it's so important to people in DC. Obviously, the Anacostia is one of our two major waterways, but because the watershed is so big and it runs into the Chesapeake and then it goes further south, this very I can't think of the word, compacted area affects so much around it. I think they've shown in their 2025 State of the River document, they definitely show that they have made progress, but you can see that where they've made progress, in other ways things have fallen off, whether it's because of additional development that's been happening around the river, in DC's quest to build a new stadium and make the waterfronts more inviting for people to come to. That also means there's more development, which means that people are trying to sneak things in, so I think, my point was that they have their work cut out for them. And it's an interesting case study to me because it's so important. And, my kids and I love going to the river. And one day I'd love to be able to swim in it. I think a couple of years ago, for the first time, they let like 4 people sign up to have like a 30-second dip. And I was like, no, thank you. Yeah, so that's what I chose. It's a not really a case study, but it sort of is.
I think you could turn it into one.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it is, right? In the broadest sense of a case study, it is, but I think you could write it up and you could publish it.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
I'm curious, Ann, do you know what was the cause of the pollution? Is it all runoff, or were there other causal factors?
Yes. So mainly lots of people were polluting. They were dumping sewage straight in. They were dumping toxic materials. Anacostia Watershed Society. So one of the things that I love is like they do 3 different things. They do the public policy and advocacy part, they do the education part, and then they also do the native restoration part. So they go in and they pull out invasives, and then they plant native stuff back in. And they have seen, they do a lot of work. They get a lot of the community involved. They have lots of education programs for kids, school-aged kids and adults. which is really great. But so it's loss of habitat, loss of natives. So that attributes to the silt and to the buildup of toxins because all the natives that would, clean it out because of development. Like, right, we have people moving in and there's no place to live. And our politicians are going, well, these developers want to buy this land, even though it's right on the river and we need this river. But they're going to pay me all this money to build a high rise of apartment buildings, and we need the housing. So I think it's too many years of DC politicians being able to sell off land and not be responsible for the repercussions. So it's development, it's companies that were definitely dumping. I got caught dumping. So the AWS was able to like bring a lot of these people to court and go, this is what you're doing, and held them accountable. And then the loss of the native plant areas and the marshes around to be able to help clean that out. They've also been putting in freshwater mussels. So they replant lots of batches of freshwater mussels since they've started to help clean that up. But yeah, so it's a combination. And, and again, 176 square miles, but ours is just tiny and it's done a lot of damage.
Other questions or comments for Anne? And if you haven't seen it, there is a discussion going on in the chat room about Tree of Heaven, horrible plants, horrible, horrible, and how they are the most wonderful place in the world for the spotted lanternfly. So if you see one, just smack it down, just smack it down.
Well, they're tough to catch, so but they are at risk of putting our grape industry at risk. So yeah, knock them down.
I know that here it's so hard to kill them because we don't really get cold weather down here.
Yeah,
They
you
they
can't
actually
kill them.
they actually paint them with they cut it down and then they paint it with glyphosate. I mean, anything to get rid of them.
They're hard to kill.
They are very hard
And
to
they're
kill.
so prolific. I mean,
They are.
Mhm.
think you've killed them, and then you see like a whole
Shoot, come back up.
They're resilient. The only way is to remove the habitat that they
That they survive in.
but even then they adapt. It's just yeah. The University of Massachusetts just had a whole seminar on the spotted lanternflies because the grapes it was part of a grapes emporium because they're at risk, right? Concord grapes could eventually be a thing of the past. It's crazy.
Who else has a case study to present?
I can share my case study.
Okie doke.
All right, let me just share my screen. And I did my case study on the Maria Butler Levin Preserve meadow restoration. This preserve is located in McLean, Virginia. And it was the former estate of Dr. Maurice Levin, who was a noted economist. And it's 20 acres in size. And he basically purchased this property in 1932 and created an arboretum and a natural habitat. And he wanted to share this estate with the public. So in his will, he left the 20-acre Honoria estate that he had owned along with his wife to Fairfax County Park Authority with the expressed condition that it be used to serve the public for educational purposes and for demonstration projects. It couldn't be used as an active park, which is creating ball fields and playgrounds. It had to be used as a passive park for the express purpose of educational and demonstration project work. what had happened over time when this particular reserve was handed over to Fairfax County. And I forgot to mention that the arboretum itself on the property is extensive. It has 79 species of native and non-native mature trees along with a pond and a natural spring, and other land, open land, and some old meadow land. Now, I forgot to mention that in his will, he stated that if the county tried to use the parklands for anything other than the express purpose of using it for educational and demonstration purposes, it would null and void the will, and the property would revert to his alumni association that he belonged to, the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation. So he had very stringent requirements for this property under the stewardship of Fairfax County Park Authority. In 1965, Fairfax County Park Authority attempted to make some changes to the property, irrespective of the will, and build a parking facility. And also, they wanted to use some of the land to realign Kirby Road, which is adjacent to this preserve. The executor caught wind of it, sued Fairfax County, and long story short, they were not able to make those changes. Sans losing the parcel of land and it reverting to WARF, the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation. So if we fast forward to 1986, the Park Authority had contracted with a group called Echo B, Dean, Austin, and Williams to conduct a master plan of the property because they wanted to make sure that they could, make changes to the property, but also make sure that they did not violate the provisions of Dr. Levin's will. Over time, the property was maintained by the county, but it kind of got in a bit of disrepair. They did the basic maintenance. They weren't actively maintaining the property, and I think it's because of staffing and costs. So you had some of the woodland areas where you had fallen trees. The pond in the spring area was in disrepair. The paths were in disrepair. So they wanted to know what could we do to maintain this property and use it for its express purpose without violating the will. So they contracted out this and asked this group to create a master plan. And basically what they had discovered that this property, I won't call it neglect, but through benign mismanagement, so to speak, could use some major changes to bring it up to the level where it could be used as a space for educating the public and for demonstration purposes. And in the end, they had recommended that they enhance the preserve and its access. They create an orientation area with a native plant nursery. And the orientation area on the property would be the old house that still remained that they can turn into an educational building. Build trails so that the public could easily access various portions of the park, restore the stream and the pond, rehabilitate some of the planting areas, create new ones, and come up with a maintenance program to maintain the various types of trees, plants based on the zones that they had, which was not done in the past. So fast forward to 2018, one of the projects that Fairfax County had started in concert with Earth Sangha, which is a volunteer nonprofit group that basically, through donations from the public, rehabilitate forest land and meadows and wetlands by removing invasives and also introducing native plants to restore ecological balance. They have proposed that they take some of the open area of the property in the park or preserve rather, and turn it into meadows land. They had already had a little project where they had done that with a small section of a lawn area, and they wanted to continue and transform the open grass area into a meadow. Earth Sangha had raised money to perform this work, and they had requested grant money from Mastonbrook Volunteer Matching Funds. And through work with volunteers, Boy Scout groups, community groups such as Extension Master Gardeners, they came up with a plan to convert this land to a meadow with paths that the public could use to walk through the meadow and observe the plants and also access other areas of the preserve. And they took this open grass area and they replanted that area with approximately 5,000 container grown herbaceous native plants that they grew at their nursery. And they also sowed 15 pounds of native plant seeds. And some of the species that they used to convert this open grass area into a meadow was broom sedge, blue stem, southern rye, purple lovegrass, little blue stem, Indian grass, purple top grass. They planted wildflowers such as the common milkweed, butterfly weed, flat top white aster. Um, there's a number of different other plants that I'm not going to mention because I'm running low on time, but the black-eyed season, and you guys get the point. By restoring this open area that was originally a lawn and turning it into a meadow, they helped the ecological prominence of this area. It's now an area for wildlife, for birds. It's habitat for butterflies, the monarch, and other native butterflies in this area. Also, smaller animals that normally would inhabit a meadow have come back, and they've kind of reinvigorated and helped the ecological balance of this preserve by adding that meadow, converting the grassland to a meadow. This partnership demonstrates how, if the community and nonprofits get involved, you can take a property such as the Maria Butler Levin Preserve and maintain it and create it for its purpose of educating the public, and using it as a demonstration garden and maintaining the ecological balance. I know the county, because of their budget and their priorities, didn't have the resources to maintain this property. And back in 2018, it was in, I won't say a really bad state, but it was sad because of the lack of maintenance. And had not the county at that time taken into account that they needed to do something to the property, else the value of it for the public and for the ecological value would be damaged. So, working with Earth Sangha, working with the public to restore, reinvigorate, and rehabilitate this area not only helps the ecological area, but also helps people like me that love these natural spaces that we are desperately losing in Northern Virginia. This preserve is located in McLean, and the property values in McLean are astronomical. And I think this preserve. The land that it's on is probably worth in excess of $200 million, and that's conservative. And I know developers have wanted to purchase it at one point in time if they could have got around the wills provision from the county. Because in the past, the county has done land swaps with developers. So this is my case study on the Maria Butler Levin Preserve. I hope I didn't ramble on too long, and if I did, I apologize.
You did not. And for like she said, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's just outside DC. And if you think about where the ambassadors live, if you think about where members of Congress live, if you think about where tech executives live, if they are not living in Maryland, they are living in McLean or Great Falls. This is an outrageously expensive place to even try to live. So that they could preserve this land is incredible because that means that not only are they not allowing it to be developed, Fairfax County is not collecting real estate taxes on it, that it would be for several multi-million dollar mansions and estates that would be there. So this is a huge thing.
It's a huge win for the public. And I thank Dr. Levin for having the foresight in 1961 to put in his will that this is the express use of this property. And if you don't honor that, the land goes to someone else who will. So kudos to him. But if you get the chance to visit Northern Virginia and you have a chance to go to this preserve, it's worth the trip.
Anybody have questions or comments for Sonia?
Thank you for the inspiration.
You're welcome.
Carolyn, you're going to build the next one, right?
Of course, yeah. This is a good time because I'm actually a little less passionate because I'm settling in. So my case study was on an area called the Dismal Swamp in New Jersey. Like Kelly, I think it was Kelly, I am also a Jersey native. I'm living in PA now, but I'm a Jersey girl at heart. And the Dismal Swamp is an area in 3 townships in New Jersey, Metuchen, Edison, South Plainfield. So it's a very densely populated area. And the Dismal Swamp is what it sounds like, a swamp. It is a 660 acre wetland area. There's a larger territory beyond that that direct watershed. See, New Jersey. So the case study came as a round 2 because my first attempt was bringing me in a direction that was just not going in a good way. So I just kind of came across this project, which was something that I was involved in the late 80s. So in 1989-ish, a group of grassroots community organizers got together to kind of bring awareness to the public that this area might be developed into a large apartment condominium complex. So with bake sales and fundraisers, they paid off. They were able to afford to hire attorneys and engineers and people to conduct the surveys and presented this data to the town. And P.S., long story short, after a long history, 3 decades it took them to get there. And it is now a established, named wildlife preserve. In that journey of preventing the development of that area, there were still constant threats. There were other things that were going on. So it wasn't like the area was preserved and one and done. There was a lot of people trying to encroach on that property. And through the efforts of the grassroots organizations, Edison Wetlands is one of them, and Save Our Swamp is another one. which I helped both of those organizations and another one. We were able to have environmental impact study conducted, and one of the members, um, oh my gosh, Siegel, Robert Siegel. Oh my gosh, yeah, I think it's his name. I'm getting nervous. He found some discarded capacitors on the property, which are batteries, and it was leaking contaminants into the soil. P.S. He called the New Jersey DEP. They did an investigation, and a 70-acre area was deemed a Superfund site. So, being from New Jersey, I think we're the capital of Superfund sites. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, I know a lot about Superfund sites. I also looked into a degree in wildlife biology while I was doing this. So my husband needs to know that I might be changing course like past midlife. Anyway, back to the preserve. So I just found out in the last 12 hours or so that the latest update is with the cleaning of the Superfund site on the property. In 2013, things kind of stalled, and then as of 2024, which is just a couple years ago, the remediation of that site has been completed. So I can put a link to the park. I don't have any fun slides. It would have been helpful if I did that. But with in the website for the park, it gives you pictures of this fenced off area and all these warning signs. So could you imagine, going to a park and enjoying a preserve, and then you come across a Superfund site? That could be a little jarring, I would imagine. You would think twice about bringing your kids there. So I was really relieved to hear that the final remediation took place. I went down so many rabbit holes. I wanted to make sure I got the timeline correct. I wanted to make sure that, giving credit to the people that really just never gave up in this effort to preserve this property. And right now, it's the former Governor Murphy of New Jersey declared it a national, a wildlife preserve. So according to what I read in other statutes and policies and things, this is a permanently protected space. So that's what the sign says. Protected forever.
Questions or comments for Carolyn?
Yeah, I have one. Um, you said it's Metuchen, Edison, and South Plainfield?
Yep.
I had never heard, that's not too far from where I grew up, but I hadn't heard of it. So when you said
Yeah.
capacitor, it made me think of Back to the Future with
I
like the
know.
plutonium. So it was like radioactive?
No, it wasn't radioactive, but they found PCBs and a lot of other heavy metals and contaminants. The list is kind of scary of what they found, but no, nothing radioactive. Other areas in New Jersey, yes, but not that one.
Okay, because I'm thinking the flux capacitor, the
Right.
plutonium.
I'll put a link to the park because I do want to actually go over there. My son and my daughter-in-law and grandchildren actually now live in Edison, not too far from that site. So,
Yeah, my
um,
mom and my brother still live in New Jersey, so I go back occasionally.
yeah.
So who have we not heard from who would like to tell us about their case?
I haven't gone.
Okay, okay, Alan.
Okay, I can do it next week too if you're in a rush to.
We are not in a rush.
Okay. I did mine on in Asheville, North Carolina. There's a brewery, New Belgium Brewing Company, and when they came in with their brewery, it is along the French Broad River that used to be industrial property. And when they built it, they made sure that environmental restoration was one of the primary concerns. Um, like one thing they did, there was a tributary running behind it. Sorry, hold on a second. Sorry. And they daylit the tributary and have that stream. Now it's clean and running like a normal stream would. Um, Instead of using like impermeable elements, they use like native vegetation to stabilize the stream banks and manage the water flow. They use native trees and shrubs and flowers that would thrive in a floodplain or riparian conditions. They at the site used a lot of native plants across the whole area. It's not just a small little brewery. It's got one main area for people to drink, and it's got another area where you can see they make the beer, and then it's got another area where families can come or people just kind of relax along the river. And so they use the opportunity that a lot of people come there to, they have signs everywhere showing how the restoration happened and, um, what kind of native plants they used. And they have tours of the area. So they've done a good job of educating the public on how it can be redeveloped. Um, and that's one of the main things I like about it, that there's kind of this co-government business redevelopment where you can have something turn around and be great economically for the area as well as natively, naturally. Um, they use green infrastructure for most of the water management, like rain gardens, bioswales, a permeable pavement. Let's see. And since in the last few years, they did have like Hurricane Helene, of course, and it sits right on the water. And so it flooded, I think water got up to 6 feet high in that area. But I don't know, it seems like it could have been much more damaging. But they've since cleaned that whole area up and it looks like nothing ever happened. And what I like is that, they have all this landscaping everywhere, but it's not just a bunch of boxwoods and kind of pretty little landscaping, but it's very functional, but it also is looks great too. Let's see. And it's working within a functioning industrial facility and it's got clean water and it cleaned up the area, when it came in. Yeah, that's the overview.
Have you been to visit?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's about the house we will be moving into. It's less than a mile away. And actually, the tributary that they fixed behind it, it now, when they daylit it, it now goes into a creek, and the creek goes behind my house. And it was part of a large, um, I don't know what you call it, thing in Asheville where they took all these creeks that were naturally happening and they had the local residents name the creeks to become more aware of them, and a lot of volunteers and some public money put in to restore the creeks, and they look great. So, yeah, I'm benefiting too.
Cool. And if you don't know, the North Carolina Arboretum in Asheville off Frederick Olmsted Drive, not the one attached to the University of Asheville, they lost 10,000 trees in the hurricane. They are cutting those trees up. I say they're slicing them. I know that's not right, but they're not
Yeah.
cutting them. They're making long boards out of them.
Do you mean along the way to Biltmore or?
No, it's out. I talk with my hands all the time. It's out on the outskirts.
Okay.
Oh. You can actually take the parkway out there and get to it. The parkway drops you right in there. So they took the trees that are down. They're making long boards out of those trees and they're giving the boards away to people so they can make raised beds.
Oh, that's cool.
So
That's great.
in your new home, I don't know if in your garden,
I need some definite, yeah, I could use some raised beds.
well, there you go then. So, some people did not go tonight. I would ask that you be willing to present next week. And next week, I'd also like to go over the three articles that I asked you to read for tonight, the water efficient landscaping, water sense, and just a summary of the Clean Water Act. There is no written work done for next week, due for next week. It is just reading, take notes so that you can discuss it. And next week, for next week's readings, there's a case study that I want you to read. We're going to talk about it next week. And then I would like you to summarize it and submit it for March 4th, the day before the last class. So, and then everybody will be reading the same hurricane and flood resistant landscapes that follows on the water sense landscaping that you read for this week, and it follows on climate change policy and sustainable landscape design. Some of you have taken the sustainable landscape design class already. So I'm sure that you have some ideas and suggestions and notes from that class that you can bring to this one. And I think that, Emerson, did I forget anything?
Nope, I think that's it.
Then thank you all. I thought it was a good class. I thought you discussed things really well. I learned a whole lot. I'm still upset about the cranberries. But because my husband is from Massachusetts, but I'm thrilled that these birds are coming back. And I think one of the common threads in all of the discussions, or most of them, is that where all of this restoration is occurring, except for Amanda's, because we just don't know that yet. Nobody has tracked it, is that the natural wildlife is coming back, right? The birds, the butterflies, the frogs, the turtles, and even using mussels to clean the Anacostia River. I think oysters might do them better, but I don't know. I know that's what they're using in Hudson to clean it up. So with that, thank you so much. And everybody has my phone number and can text or call or email me if you need any help. And Emerson, thank you so much. I put Emerson through the Dickens this past week. So she loaded all of the videos, and I peppered everything like Saturday morning early. In my mind, people work all the time, but nope. So poor Emerson got there on Monday morning and Roe had just filled her inbox. So thank you very much.
Happy to help, Ro, anytime.
She says anytime. But thank you so much, Ms. Emerson. And thank you all tonight for a wonderful class. And please, a safe week. And I will see you next Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.